All right, everybody, welcome back for another deep dive.
Yeah. Always exciting to jump into these.
Today, you're going to be looking at two giants of urban planning.
Ooh, Titans, really?
Yeah, titans. These are huge names. They've really had a lasting impact.
Hmm.
Le Corbusier and Ebenezer Howard.
And you know what's interesting about these two? They were both really grappling with the same problems, you know? Industrialization was changing everything.
Cities were just exploding in size.
Exactly. And not always in good ways.
Yeah.
Right? So you had these thinkers trying to figure out, okay, how do we make cities better?
Right. For people and the planet.
Yeah, both of them.
And we've got this great paper that actually puts their ideas side by side.
Cool. Should be a fun comparison.
I gotta say, when I was reading about Le Corbusier and his radiant city concept,
Oh, yeah.
it was kind of mind-blowing. Like, this guy was thinking big, skyscrapers everywhere,
It was all about vertical cities. Towers in the park, he called them.
towers in the park.
Yeah. Le Corbusier was convinced that if we built up instead of out, we could free up all this land. You could have green space, make cities more efficient. It's all about functionality.
That's a pretty radical shift from the way cities were being built back then.
Oh, absolutely. Le Corbusier was part of the modern movement in architecture. They wanted to completely rethink how we design and live in cities.
And it's interesting because you see his ideas reflected even today, right?
Oh, all the time.
Think about open plan offices
Yep.
or buildings that change their function throughout the day. Like a space that's a coffee shop in the morning turns into a co-working space in the afternoon, then a bar at night.
Multifunctional spaces.
Hmm.
Le Corbusier was all about breaking down those traditional boundaries.
So it wasn't just about cramming people into tiny apartments and giant towers.
Well, that's where it gets a bit more, let's say, complicated.
Uh-oh.
Some people criticize Le Corbusier for having maybe a little too much faith in top-down planning, you know?
Interesting.
And there were concerns about how his radiant city would actually work in practice. Like, he did imagine different types of housing for different social classes.
So not quite the utopia he was aiming for.
Well, whose utopia is perfect, right? But moving on to Ebenezer Howard. Talk about a different vision.
Totally opposite direction.
Right. Instead of up, he wanted to go out. This was all about creating these garden cities.
Yes, the Garden City movement. So instead of concrete jungles, we get actual gardens.
Literally. Howard believed that we needed to reconnect with nature, that cities were making people sick literally and figuratively.
And that nature had the power to heal. I mean, it's something we're rediscovering today, right?
Totally. You see it in the rise of urban gardening, biophilic design, all that. Howard was ahead of his time in a lot of ways.
He even thought these garden cities should be mostly self-sufficient, didn't he? Like growing their own food.
Yeah, there was this emphasis on incorporating agriculture, not just little backyard gardens, but actual farmland woven into the city fabric.
Wow, that's ambitious.
Yeah.
How did he think that would actually work?
Well, his idea involved having this ring of agricultural land around the city center. And then a really interesting part was his idea of cooperative ownership. The land value increases would benefit the whole community, not just a few lucky landowners.
So smart urban design could help fix social problems.
That was the hope. You know, Howard saw how industrial cities were trapping people in poverty. He wanted to break that cycle.
I can see why his ideas are still so relevant today. People are really searching for that balance, right?
Yeah, between urban living and access to nature.
Okay, but let's be real for a second. Can a city really function without cars? I mean, especially these days.
Well, that was a key difference between Howard and Le Corbusier. Le Corbusier was actually okay with cars. He even designed his radiant city with roads running at street level. But Howard, he was way more skeptical.
So more bikes and walking.
Exactly. Howard believed that by reducing car traffic, you'd create a city that was more pedestrian-friendly, healthier, and more focused on community interaction. And, you know, those ideas are gaining traction again today as we grapple with traffic congestion and pollution.
Yeah, for sure. But wouldn't limiting cars make it harder for people to get around? Especially those who maybe can't walk or bike easily.
Oh, absolutely. It's a legitimate concern. And it's something like city planners today are trying to address, right? How do you balance the ideals of walkability with the need for accessible transportation options for everyone?
So it sounds like both Le Corbusier and Howard, even though they had these wildly different ideas, were ultimately trying to answer the same question. How do we create cities that work, but also places where people want to live.
Absolutely. They both wanted to improve quality of life.
Okay.
And I think it's amazing how their ideas, even though they were developed over a century ago, are still so relevant to the conversations we're having about cities today.
Yeah, it's like we're still trying to figure out that perfect balance.
The ideal city.
Right, between functionality and livability.
And sustainability. We can't forget that one. How do we design cities that meet the needs of the present without compromising the future?
That's a great point. It's like we're building on the foundations laid by thinkers like Le Corbusier and Howard.
Exactly. They gave us these frameworks to think about, even if we don't always agree with all their ideas.
So what do you think, as we wrap up this deep dive, if you were designing a city today, what elements from each of these approaches would you borrow?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I mean, I love the ambition of Le Corbusier's vision, the idea of really maximizing space and creating these self-contained communities within buildings. But I also really appreciate Howard's focus on nature and creating cities that are truly integrated with the environment.
It's like picking your favorite child.
It is.
Yeah.
But maybe the key is not to choose one or the other, but to find ways to blend the best of both.
Right.
To create cities that are both efficient and beautiful, functional, and inspiring.
And to keep asking those tough questions about how we can build a better future for everyone.
Exactly. Keep the conversation going. And next time you're walking around your city, maybe take a moment to think about what Le Corbusier or Howard would say about it. What works? What could be improved? And what does your ideal urban space look and feel like?
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Always a pleasure. Until next time, happy urban exploring.
And keep those city planning ideas coming.
You bet.